Today, we have a combined discussion going on today. Some nice people chatting with us. First on that list is Brian Halligan. Brian's a new acquaintance. We've only recently began to get to know one another. Brian's a really interesting guy, a technologist, an entrepreneur, a business manager. Most recently created a company that he's run for about 15 years called HubSpot, which is in the CRM space. Then you said, wait a minute, if everybody's going to be focused on the Fortune 500, there's a whole lot of people, companies, and businesses that fall below that. And let me focus there, and let me bring consumer marketing to the space to help a small business, which might only have 2, 3, 4 people, get world-class tools to manage and market their company. And then I'll grow with them. And I think that was a great insight. And I think I heard you say one time that, yeah, if you have to have a good idea, it has to be an idea that no one else think will work. And clearly you made that work there. Since then, now you're executive chairman and you're focused on a new fund, which is called Propeller, which is all about investing at the intersection of all things climate and all things ocean and how they might solve them. We'll certainly get into that. And joining me today from Worth is Josh Kampel, the CEO of Worth, and Paul Stamoulis, the president of Worth. And we're here to have a conversation and learn about this. This is the kind of thing, Brian, where the conversation you and I had on the phone recently, we were just having a little bit before, we get to record them and continue the same conversation and share it with our community.
Okay.
So what did you do before HubSpot? I know you were in tech, and I think you were working in large companies. You were mostly on the sales side, though?
I was in tech. Right out of school, I joined an early stage software company called PTC. Joined early. I was like their 5th secretary, and I was like the secretary to the head of sales. And so back then you had those little manila envelopes that they passed memos around, and you'd be like certain ones, and I was on the
cross it out.
Yep, I was in the secretarial pool.
Yeah.
And that it must have been pretty good secretary to the head of sales, and I kind of just worked my way up. And I had a good run there. I started real early. The company scaled, and I left when it was probably 5,000 people, 10 billion market cap. Learned a lot, and
well, you had great formal education. That sounds like great finishing school.
It was great. I learned a ton, and then that was sort of like a very sales-driven company. We sold CAD software. It's terrific. And then I did a startup called Groove Networks, which ended up getting acquired by Microsoft. And the founder of that was sort of the
That sounds good.
It was pretty good. Was the father of Lotus Notes, and he was very, very product. He was a product visionary, real visionary. So that was a very different company, very product centric, engineering centric, focused on the future. And like PTC was sort of very right wing, and Groove was very sort of left wing.
Sounds like it.
And learned a lot from both. Then I went back to business school at Sloan, learned a lot about finance, and all that kind of blended together and like turned into something that I could run a company and start a company, and that ended up being HubSpot.
Grew up in Massachusetts, went to school at the University of Vermont.
Yes.
And then you mentioned Sloan at MIT, so great education, all in New England.
Yes.
So, but now when you get this crazy idea to start HubSpot, it became a global company kind of quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, about almost half our revenue is global. Yeah, very, very quickly. I'll tell you how we came up with the idea for HubSpot.
Please.
There's sort of 2 ahas. I had one, and my co-founder who I went to school with had one. My aha was I was working with lots of startups, and they're trying to scale, and I was working with a bunch of venture capitalists helping their companies. And they all had the same marketing plan. We're going to buy a list and email people. They were going to hire a bunch of sales reps and cold call. They were going to do as much advertising as they could afford, and they were going to spend a bunch of money on PR. And they all did the exact same stuff. None of it worked. None of it worked. None of it worked. And it was like, you know what was interesting about it is my aha was people are sick and tired of being marketed to and getting good at blocking it, whether that's caller ID, blocking the phone calls out, spam protection, blocking the emails out.
Or having people like you just hanging up on people.
Yes, ad blocker. Yeah, I mean, like, at the time, DVR was a new technology. So it's just, I was like, wow, marketing's changing. My eventual co-founder, Dharmesh, this is 100 years ago, started blogging, had an early tech blog. Worth would like that. And he would blog like twice a week, kind of casually. If you heard an interesting speaker, would blog about it. And I was comparing the 8 or 9 companies I was working with and looking at how much website traffic they had versus his crappy little blog that he didn't spend much time on. And he had 1,000 times more interest in his real crap blog than any of mine.
Because
kind of wealthy venture-backed startups.
Because he was putting chum in the water there. He was putting things that people wanted to come to, not run away from.
And we started describing that as there's 2 different worlds. There's outbound marketing, which my folks were doing, interrupting their way into people's lives. And then we described what Dharmesh was doing was inbound marketing, creating content, pulling people into Google and social and other blogs. And we started describing the world that way. Some people were like, yeah, you're onto something. And then we tried to do it, and it was complicated. You had to put it in a website, you had to put it in social media tools and CRM and market. Complicated. So we built kind of a modern marketing platform and eventually a CRM platform to enable mere mortals to pull this stuff up.
But you say eventually CRM. CRM is what you're known for now.
Yes.
But you didn't start out with that as the intent. It started out to create digital marketing tools.
Yes, to get visitors to your website. Now we've gone from visitors to leads to all the way through to servicing your customers. Yeah.
And that was one aha. What was the second?
The second aha was really my co-founder there, creating content, pulling people in. Like there's a new way to capture people's interest. You didn't have to advertise on somebody else's asset. You could create your own asset. It's so cheap.
Yeah.
And there was a terrific New Yorker cartoon back then, and you may guys remember it. There's a dog kind of typing on the internet, and there's another dog looking over his shoulder. But what are you doing typing on that thing? And the dog typing on the internet said, you know, the great thing about the internet is nobody knows you're a dog. And he's right. Nobody did know you're a dog. And so we enabled small, medium, scaling companies to do that. And we started with little tiny companies. Now a lot of big companies use our products.
How'd you come up with the name?
It's a double entendre in Boston. So Oliver Wendell Holmes, a long, long time ago, referred to Boston as the hub of the universe.
Right.
And so HubSpot is sort of the hub of the universe. And like, how do you turn your business into a hub on the internet?
That's great.
Yes. I had to look up what double entendre meant.
And who said it was the hub of the universe?
And I love that you use the marketing funnel. I think anyone who's been in sales and marketing talks about driving top end of the funnel and pulling them through. So now, who owns the relationship with HubSpot in an organization? Is it sales? Is it marketing? Is it both? Is it growth? This new role? I mean,
Yes. Most of our customers now use it for marketing, sales, service. And there's a new persona inside of most companies that are scaling. They have an ops persona that sort of runs the machine. And oftentimes that revenue ops person, or sometimes they're called growth people, own the HubSpot system across the whole end-to-end system. I used to like that idea of a funnel, but I think it misses something. I like the idea of describing your go-to-market as a flywheel with like marketing is pulling in the beginning and then sales closes them and then service delights them. And then if I ask my customers, why did you buy HubSpot? Like, was it our marketing? Was there a great selling? Like, what was it? Almost everyone tells us, well, we used it in our last company or a friend told us. So like your customers are your best source of leads. So I kind of think of it as a flywheel versus a funnel nowadays.
and to your point, retention's as important or more important than new customer acquisition.
Because almost every business now is a subscription business.
Yeah.
But what I liked about your plan was you looked at the world in a stratified fashion and said, Fortune 500 we're not going to pay any attention to. But then there's everything else out there. But you went even further in your philosophy, which says, if it's a two-person shop, I don't want them to go start someplace else and then figure out how do I get them to switch to me when they grow up a little bit. I'm going to give them a $50 a month entry price point so they don't have to move away.
Yeah.
Now, what's the economics of that? Is that can you do that affordably there, or does it just doesn't matter? If you can get them hooked on your product, get them contributing to your flywheel, get them to be part of your community, eventually they'll grow up enough that you can make something on them.
You have to think a lot about this very good question, a lot about the economics. So we actually lowered our price a lot and created a freemium version. So most people start with our free edition.
Yeah.
And then they'll move to starter and pro and enterprise. In that starter edition at $50, if it was just that product, it probably wouldn't be that profitable because there's a decent amount of companies that just go out of business. But so many of those people, as they scale, move up to our higher tier products. So our key is how do we keep our cost to acquire a customer low with like freemium edition, inbound marketing, really good marketing techniques, good word of mouth, and keep that cost to acquire low. But how do we get that lifetime value of a customer very high so they're our happiest customers, our most successful customers, are buying more products, adding more users, and expand over time. And getting those two numbers right is really important to scale a business.
Well, I think we'd love to hear, you're talking to two people here in Josh and Paul who are fans of your product,
I
your
appreciate it.
company, and you looked around at different options and you guys decided that it was HubSpot. And then I really only began to learn a lot more about you when you acquired a company of a fellow I'm a fan of, Sam Parr.
Oh, I love Sam Parr.
Yeah.
I didn't know you knew Sam.
I only know him, I've not met him, but we've spoken, and I'm a fan of what he does and his product and his personality.
Me too.
So what was the thinking there in terms of that must have had a few people going,
I did have a few people go, oh, some investors are. So for people who don't know Sam Parr runs something called The Hustle, which is started as a newsletter.
Well, it started as a conference first, right?
Did it start as a conference? But it's very popular newsletter, very popular online community, and now a really popular podcast. And he's a terrific, he's got a terrific podcast.
With his buddy Sean.
Yes. We largely did it for the podcast. Podcasts are hard to do. You guys are skilled at it. And we hadn't figured that out yet. We had a fantastic blog. We're fantastic at search engine optimization. We were very good at product-led growth. But more and more people are spending their time listening to podcasts. We're like, we need to get in that game. So we largely acquired Sam for his podcast. He also had a killer newsletter and a killer following.
Yeah.
We kind of like that too. So it's newsletter. We weren't that good at newsletters.
Newsletters.
Yes. And we weren't great at newsletters, and we were actually pretty bad at podcasting. So like he was great at the things we weren't very good at the marketing side.
Yeah.
And I think it also added a little bit of an edge to our brand that I really liked. I think Sam's gotten a little edge that was pretty cool.
Sam's famous for creating The Hustle. Way I understood it, I might not be right, but is that he started out with this big conference, this California conference, and then COVID came along and he shifted his emphasis more to the newsletter. And I think he's the first person to create a 1 million person newsletter.
Yeah, he was very early on that. He's very talented.
And he's very good at freemium.
Yes, and he's very good at hiring. He's got a knack for hiring. He's super talented.
Steph
people.
Smith.
Great.
Yeah.
And are there lessons that your clients learn from Sam and how he was able to aggregate audience and drive engagement? Is that part of that where there's a lot of things there that probably your clients would love to understand on how he was able to build that business and engage his existing sort of database?
I think it comes to we were talking earlier about Seth Godin. I'm a big fan of Seth Godin.
Yeah.
And Seth Godin, any speech you hear of him, he uses the word remarkable a lot. And I like that word because his basic concept is you need to be worthy of remark. You need to do something unique from everyone else that everyone wants to talk about. Sam is remarkable.
Yeah.
He creates remarkable content. I think he gets a lot of his content ideas because he lives on Reddit all day and there's really interesting stuff on there.
Yeah.
And he looks at the trends on Reddit because they're very early. Reddit talks about stuff before the New York Times or Wall Street Journal will talk about it. So he's looking at the very beginning of where those news cycles begin. And he focuses on interesting stories and he writes about them and he talks about them. He also has interesting guests on his podcast.
Plus, he's just naturally curious.
Yes, he's very naturally
And,
curious.
he'll drill down and he'll ask you really embarrassing things about your numbers. I mean, like he really wants to know, well, don't tell me the version that you've been telling for 5 years. I really want to, how did you get that first check? Who was it from? How much was it for? He really used to drill down.
Now, this is first reported anywhere, but Sam and I have something unusual in common.
What's that?
We're both very nervous flyers.
Really?
Very nervous. Takes a lot to get me on an airplane.
No kidding.
Yep, I'm flying to Europe tonight. I'm already nervous.
Bring the booze, please.
So you take the train down from Boston to New York usually?
Always.
Oh,
Never
that's-
fly.
wow.
Never fly.
I didn't realize that about Sam. I was in LA this past weekend. We both were there
Milken.
together, Milken, and I was out for a jog, and I'm listening to Sam's podcast called The First Million with Sean, and they were one of the entrepreneurs I had on had a new hearing aid business, and Sam revealed that he's very hard of hearing and will be one of their first customers. That's the first I'd heard that.
The hearing aid business has been some regulatory changes that are going to really open things up. Where
Dramatically.
you can buy one in
Yeah.
CVS, you don't need it.
Prescription.
They're going to get cheaper and better.
Yep.
Which I'm looking forward to someday.
And Apple's going to play a big role, is my understanding from hearing that dialogue.
Oh, I didn't
over
know
the
that.
weekend. Yeah, it's devices, it's glasses. It sounds like everyone's expecting them to have a really killer product there.
Yeah. One of the things I like that you guys are writing about at work last month is longevity.
That's related because if we're living longer, we're all going to be customers of a hearing aid.
Pretty
going
much every. I mean, you lose your hearing
Yeah.
as you get older. A lot of things just happen. But you have Peter Attia on your cover. I love Peter Attia.
Yeah.
And I love Andrew Huberman. If Peter Attia and Andrew Huberman said I would live longer by jumping out of your 18th story window, I would probably do it. I want to tell you about my Andrew Huberman morning routine this
Please.
morning.
Let's hear this.
Okay. So first thing I do is I wake up.
That's a good start.
Then I go outside, get some sunshine in my face.
Uh-huh.
Then I work out.
Not always possible in Boston.
Any sun is better than no sun.
Yeah.
Then I get a good workout. Then I take a ice cold shower, which really sucks actually.
You're not a tub guy. Jump into the ice.
I don't do the tub. I don't know. I shower does it for me. And then I take a fistful of supplements, and then I'll have my breakfast and off to the day. And I used to drink coffee, a lot of coffee, but the cold shower and the workout in the sun, I don't need coffee until I'll have 1 cup at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Now, how long lived is this morning routine? When did it start?
probably 12 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was it Peter?
It was Andrew Huberman who really got me, but they kind of are, soul
Yep.
sisters.
Mhm.
They both are saying very similar things.
Yeah.
You want to try it? You want me to send that to you and you can
Please.
work on it?
Yeah.
You do the cold thing?
I don't do the cold thing. No.
Yeah.
But I was just chatting with a friend a couple of weeks ago. He's an MD, and he runs a big healthcare system on Long Island. He's a wonderful guy named Patrick O'Shaughnessy. We just did a podcast.
Patrick O'Shaughnessy.
Hi. And he's a physician, but he now runs the health system. And he got one of these cold plunge tubs that he does every morning. He says it's changed his life.
Yeah.
We had a neighbor put in a pool, and it's fine. You see the pool, but then next to it, you see
Cold
a square and a cold plunge.
Is that
That
right?
used to be at the jacuzzi.
Right. Yes. not both.
Yeah, and he said, "Jump right in. It's the best thing of your life." And I said, "This sounds like one of those things that after a year you'll stop using."
Yeah.
He said, "I've been using it for
Well, look,
for
athletes
years."
have been doing it, right?
Yes,
For their cells and
That's
their,
a good point.
Yeah.
So it's something that I think consumers realize is starting to.
It's a NASDAQ commercial for the QQQ where they have the athletes in those
Yeah.
cold
Yeah,
plunge
jump it in.
tubs.
That's right.
Yes.
So take us back to that terrible day that changed your life.
Sure. I was snowmobiling in Woodstock, Vermont, actually from Bridgewater to Woodstock.
It's a beautiful area.
Yeah.
Love the Woodstock Inn.
And we should. And I snowmobile a lot, and I was actually with my son, and we were. It was.
How old's he?
He's just turned 19. We were going along a trail I knew very, very well, and we just made a little error on the trail and went up over the lip, and I couldn't see over the lip, but behind that lip it just dropped. It's like a small cliff, and we went down like a mile. Went through lots of small trees, and then bam, slammed into a tree, and it tossed us both out.
You on the same snowmobile?
So the same snowmobile. Neither of us remember hitting the tree, and I don't know how long we were passed out for, but eventually I woke him up, and we're a mess. And nobody knew where we were. Nobody in the world knew where we were, and it was 4:30, freezing cold.
Dark is fast approaching.
Dark fast approaching, middle of February. And I was wondering whether I was going to make it. And we sat there for a while talking and strategizing. We both had a lot of broken bones, so we couldn't move. And we were just kind of on the side of a mountain in the middle of nowhere. And then I remembered I had my iPhone, because I usually don't bring it, because Vermont, there's no signal anymore. And sure enough, I had just enough bars that I could dial those 3 magic numbers that I'd never dialed before, 911. and lady answered the phone. I'd never called before. They're great. 911 is awesome. And then she called the 2 local fire departments, which are volunteer up there.
Yeah.
And then the dispatcher called the firefighters in their homes, so they got on their snowmobiles to come find us. And by the time they found us, it was pitch black out.
How frightening.
And then they kind of towed us out of their helicopters up to Dartmouth University, who put Humpty Dumpty and the son back together, basically. But it was brutal.
13 broken bones. Huh?
Yeah, 13 broken bones, 5 surgeries in the hospital for a long time. It was brutal. It was brutal. It was a wake-up call, though. I was like, if I get out of this, you know, I want to live my life differently. I want to work on something different career-wise. And
At that time, you're still CEO of HubSpot,
yes.
and now you have to rely on other people, obviously.
Yep, a terrific woman took over for me while I was gone. It's interesting, the HubSpot board meeting had happened the week before, and we had had a conversation. It was on the agenda, the run over by the bus scenario. What happens if Brian gets run over by a bus? And it wasn't a bus, it was a snowmobile. But we had decided this wonderful woman, Yamini Rangan, was the, break class, Yamini will take over. And sure enough, a week later, she took over. And I wasn't conscious enough
Now,
to be
did
involved
you
in
see
that
her
decision.
around the snowmobile before you left?
I don't think she wanted it. I don't think she wanted it.
So she didn't want the job, but you said she did terrific at it, and you
Terrific.
said she was better than you.
I think she was better than me. And then when I got better, I was out for 7 months. And so the week before I was going to come back, I called her up and I said, you know, I got terrific news. You know, I don't want to come back. You're the new CEO. And she said, no. I don't want to be the CEO. This is a tough 7 months. I don't want to do it. And I was like, you're doing it. And she thought about it for a good few days before she came back and said yes. And she's been great. She's doing terrific.
If you had a chance to go back, do you think you would have erased that experience from
No, I think it was, honestly, it was a good thing. It was a reset button I kind of needed.
You might have done fewer than 13 bones.
1:30 in the afternoon? Maybe it's a little bit more lighter.
Yeah. I will say thank you to AT&T who saved my life.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Might
I bet
be-
not a lot of people have thanked AT&T.
I was going to say, you might be the only customer that said that.
And this is before the new phones now. If you have an accident, it uses the satellite system,
Oh, is that right?
not the cell system. And it's on my phone too, the new Apple phones, to basically call 911 for you.
On the new Apple Watch.
Yeah, Apple Watch there.
Yeah. Well, thank God for technology, because you wouldn't be here.
Yep. I'm a techno optimist.
Yeah. So it does change your life. It is, literally a life-changing event for you. And then you say, I got the company in good shape. We have a terrific CEO. My son's recovered. I'm well on my way to full recovery. I want to spend my time differently now. I want to take my energy, my intellect, my curiosity, and go look at something different. How did climate hit the intersection of all your thoughts there?
Yep. When I stepped down from HubSpot, my first thought was I'd like to get into climate, existential crisis of our lives. It felt like something worth spending time on. And so I started on, we talked about this before, but I started on, it was like a field trip where I visited lots of entrepreneurs and professors and investors in the climate space. And the more people know about climate, the more depressing they are.
So this is the road trip to darkness.
It was not a happy time, and I couldn't find anything that was like I could dig my teeth into. Then one day I visited the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution on Cape Cod, which is kind of the MIT of the ocean. Oceanographers are optimistic about climate change.
You shocked me when you told me that, because I told you about my journey to learn how important the climate was, and how I didn't have the right to sit back as either a business leader or as a dad or as a granddad. I didn't have the right anymore after I'd been exposed to people who really knew how serious the problem was, how proximate it was, but more importantly, how things could be done about it. So I told you about my day-and-a-half conference in Mountain View, California last year, when Josh and Paul put on this terrific climate event, first and now as an ongoing series. But it was eye-opening for me. But I didn't know what you've told me about the ocean and Woods Hole in particular.
Yeah.
Why are they optimistic?
The ocean absorbs 93% of all the excess heat created since the Industrial Revolution. handy. The ocean absorbs.
Absorbs and dissipates.
Yes. It absorbs half the carbon dioxide and it produces half of the oxygen. So it's not even the unsung hero in climate change. It's the MVP.
Yeah.
And people talk about the Amazon and they talk about Congo. Super important, and
Yeah.
we need to preserve all those. But the ocean is really the lungs of the earth. And very few
But
people.
we're doing our best to pollute it.
We are doing.
Does that reduce its effectiveness?
We're doing a really good job of polluting it. I think it does. All the plastic in the ocean isn't a good thing. I tend to think about the ocean a little bit differently, though. I think people treat it as the victim. I think of it as the hero. And I think if we're very, very careful and we work closely with scientists who really know what they're doing, I think the ocean can absorb a lot more heat and a lot more carbon dioxide. And it can really help us in a big way, solve this climate crisis. And after spending the last 12 months in this, I'm pretty optimistic about climate change. I think we can get our arms around it. I think we need to change our behaviors. All kinds of industries need to change from scratch. But I see a lot of interesting technologies out there and a lot of smart people in climate tech and coming from tech into climate tech working on really promising solutions. So call me optimistic about climate change after really researching it.
And it's such an
That's
important,
unusual.
Yeah, and what I found interesting is when you said that there are surprisingly few people thinking about the ocean, many other places. But if it is so outsized in its impact and it is such a force in what can represent the change, why do you think there aren't more people diving into?
Diving in.
I did it. Diving in.
It's a deep topic. I don't know.
He said worth spending time on, so I can say diving in. I'm just saying. Double entendre. Something about that earlier.
I think the ocean's hard. I think it's cold and it's deep and it's unforgiving. And what I ended up doing was starting a venture fund at the intersection of the ocean and climate change. It's called Propeller. I like the name a lot. And the oceans and there's probably 100 credible climate change venture funds now, and I think they'll do very well. But I kind of think it was the first, in the United States, legit independent venture fund for the ocean. And I just think people hadn't thought of it, or they think of the ocean as complicated and hard. It is, but I think working on hard problems that aren't obvious often turns into, good things happen. Giant fortunes get made, and lots of good things can happen to the planet if we're very, very careful.
And I think, to your point, it's, we talk a lot about it, this idea of conscious capitalism.
Yeah.
Right? You said giant fortunes can be made. These are business problems worth solving.
Yes.
Right? These are huge opportunities to do well and do good.
Yes.
And climate, there's no silver bullet, right? It's
Yeah.
going to take everyone's, efforts across lower consumption, carbon capture and sequestration, all of these people working on amazing things to really solve the yearly heat increase.
I totally agree with you on that.
I think the big unlock for me at Mountain View in March of 22 was what you just touched on. The capitalists are on this now.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me hopeful, because there's a huge business opportunity
It
here.
is.
You talked about our hero and friend Seth Godin earlier. A couple of others, John Doerr from Kleiner Perkins, who just gave $1.1 billion to Stanford for the first School of Sustainability, and our friend Bill Gross from Idea Lab, who spoke at both of our Mountain View events, and he knocks me out every time I listen to him because he's just so darn smart. But his point was, this is the greatest. John Doerr and Bill Gross, two of the greatest investors of all time,
Yeah.
both think this is the greatest investment opportunity they've ever seen in their lifetime. That gives me hope.
Yeah.
When you can unleash the capitalist system, all that energy, all that knowledge, all that ingenuity and capital, I get more hopeful that there'll be solutions.
Yeah, I do too. I call myself an impact capitalist, and I think it's important we get the vectors of capitalism aligned with the vectors of climate change. And we're doing a bunch of cool stuff. I'll tell you about one. I know you guys run Worth magazine, so I'm going to tell you about one cool company that we're looking at right now. It's called Navier. Have you guys heard of Navier?
No.
I'm not.
There's a terrific woman, PhD from MIT, who runs it, and she reminds me of like a Elon Musk of the ocean. And she's building She's built a 30-foot boat that is electric, a la Tesla, and and you worry like a boat, it's electric, you're gonna run out of energy in the middle of the ocean, and then you're screwed. The power charge lasts a long time. The reason it lasts a long time is it hydrofoils, so it pops up in the ocean at a certain speed.
Yeah.
And so the drag is much lower, so it can go 75 nautical miles without a charge. And then the other thing that's interesting about it is she's got a whole bunch of people from Tesla and Uber and Google X. She's got an amazing team that are at the cutting edge of autonomy. And so the ocean autonomy is a little bit easier than it is on cars. So relatively...
Not as many stoplights.
Not as many stoplights, not as many kids running across. But you still need to be super careful. And so her vision is not just to make boats, the 34, 24, but eventually have the Uber of the ocean. So you're sitting in Falmouth, Massachusetts, and you want to go over to Edgartown. You just press in your phone, hey, I would like the boat to come pick up. The boat will come with no driver and drive you over, drop you off in Edgartown. See you later, you call it on the other side. So that's kind of an interesting company that we're working on that I like a lot.
Have you seen anybody extract efficiently energy from the ocean?
Okay, there's a lot of startups we're looking at that are working on wave power.
Using the bobbing
Tide,
motion. Yeah.
wave
In
power.
tide power. No
Waves.
one's broken out yet.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is the ocean is harsh. So if you've got
It's a
wave,
chemically harsh environment.
yeah, and it gets biofouling, you get all crud on
Yeah.
on your device. And let's say your device is in the waves, man, the waves will beat the crap out of
Yeah.
anything, and then it gets all this crud on it. So no one's quite unlocked that yet, but I'm confident someone smart in the next few years is going to figure out wave power or tide power. You think about the amount of energy in waves.
Yeah.
And but by the way, the problem with wind and solar is the wind doesn't blow all the time,
Yeah.
and the sun doesn't shine all the time.
But the oceans move all the time.
They kind of do, yeah. And so that's an area we're super interested in.
We have a home out east on Long Island in the summertime, and we have a little boat on the bays, and we go over to the
Think about
inlet.
an aviator. You'd be a perfect. You think how good you'd look on that aviator.
Extinguished.
Here's the other. By the way,
And you'd be taller because
Here's
they're
the other thing about an
hydrofoils.
aviator. Because it's hydrofoiling, you're getting tossed around in the water. You get your dog on there, kid or whatever. No one gets seasick. It's
Yeah.
like you can have a glass of wine on board and it just goes smooth as can be. I had a ride out. It's really impressive.
But I pull up and I see the inlet, and the force of that water coming
Amazing.
and going. You say, this has got to be harnessable.
No one's unlocked it yet.
Yeah.
A lot of smart people are working, mostly in Europe, actually. Yeah, Europeans are kind of ahead of the Americans on a lot of climate stuff.
And how do you feel about a controversial topic in these parts, that is Mid-Atlantic and New England area, about wind farms offshore?
Yeah, I think the most promising new thing that's happened in wind farms are these floating offshore wind farms, which are very far away and people can't see them. They are less likely to be hit by a whale.
Because they're too far out.
And they're less likely to be in a fishing lane. And so that's a new technology that's just coming on that I'm optimistic about. Companies like Ørsted and companies like that are investing in it. So I think you'll see a big wave. That's the next wave. The first wave's been super controversial. I think the floating offshore will be much less controversial.
So he makes the pun,
I'm
no
super-
comment.
The waves,
Super
the
Bowl.
waves,
Thing, no
the
comment.
waves keep coming.
I see how this goes. Okay.
Super Bowl.
So where in Europe are you headed to?
I'm actually going to Monaco.
Of course you are.
Speaking
actually
of boats,
going to-
Say hello to the prince for us.
I'm meeting with so the prince is very
Big in oceans.
Exactly. So I'm
Yeah.
meeting with his team to talk about Propeller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's terrific. This is the first of what I hope will be a lot of conversations.
That'd be
I'm
great.
conscious of your time.
That'd
I
be
want you to get to the airport on time so you can begin worrying in earnest.
Thank you for having me.
Brian, thanks.
Pleasure, doctor.
Doctor.
thank you, sir.